You produce a staggering 36-volume cosmic blueprint, a blueprint that, quite frankly, challenges the fundamental mechanics of human free will.
And, the wildest part,
Right.
the Vatican just officially cleared it.
Exactly. So welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to really unpack the astonishing hidden life of Luisa Piccarreta
Yeah.
and the profound mystical framework she left behind for us.
And we are pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources for you today.
We've got the recent August and December 2024 Vatican approval letters regarding her writings, for one.
Right, and a practical guidebook titled Living in the Kingdom of the Divine Will. Plus, we'll be looking at excerpts from her very visceral, intense masterwork, The 24 Hours of the Passion of Our Lord Jesus Christ.
Okay, let's unpack this because we are not just looking at some dry theological history lesson here.
Not at all.
According to these texts, humanity is actually being offered a shortcut to a state of being that even the most famous historical saints supposedly couldn't achieve.
I mean, to really understand the sheer scale of that claim, we kind of have to look at the environment that produced it.
Let's do it.
So, Luisa Piccarreta lived from 1865 to 1947, and her confinement to bed, it wasn't described as a typical medical paralysis.
Right, it was something else entirely.
Yeah, it was her role as what the Catholic Church terms a victim soul.
A victim soul.
Exactly. In this specific theological framework, this is someone who is believed to mysteriously take on suffering for the spiritual benefit of others.
Which is an intense concept on its own.
Oh, absolutely. And the sources document these extraordinary claims about her daily reality, like subsisting essentially on the Eucharist, just the communion wafer,
Wow.
and reportedly bearing invisible stigmata.
Wait, invisible stigmata, meaning she felt it, but you couldn't see it.
Right, meaning experiencing the physical pain of the crucifixion wounds, but without the outward visible marks.
The psychological profile of someone living in that state is just fascinating to me, especially when you look at how these 36 volumes actually came to be written.
Yeah, because she wasn't exactly looking for a book deal.
Exactly. She wasn't seeking fame or trying to build a following at all. In fact, she was deeply reluctant to be seen. She kept her writings entirely hidden for years and flat out refused any financial gain.
Completely.
The only reason she put pen to paper was out of absolute submission to her confessor, St. Hannibal de Francia, and this really intense personified concept she referred to as Lady Obedience.
Oh man, the way she writes about Lady Obedience is so telling. It reveals a massive internal struggle.
Because it's not a gentle thing.
No, not at all. She doesn't describe obedience as some gentle virtue. The text portrays this force almost as a demanding, tyrannical muse.
A tyrannical muse. I like that phrasing.
Yeah, she literally describes talking to obedience as addressing a great princess and queen who imposes herself severely.
Wow.
Or she even calls it a most powerful warrior who arms himself from head to foot, ready to strike the moment one dares to contradict him.
That sounds terrifying, honestly.
It illustrates this profound psychological battle, A woman terrified of the spotlight, locked in a room, feeling compelled by this overwhelming spiritual force to document these massive, universe-spanning visions.
It's like a closed room experiment where a woman with a first-grade education is locked away, and the output is a metaphysical encyclopedia.
That was the perfect way to describe it.
And I was looking into the timeline of the Vatican's review of all this.
Yeah.
The level of scrutiny these diaries faced is incredibly intense.
Unprecedented, almost.
Right, but it makes sense, given the sheer volume of the output. When you have a massive text written under those extreme conditions, the Church doesn't just take it at face value.
Definitely not.
For decades, there was this strict moratorium, essentially a protective quarantine on the commercial publication of her complete volumes.
And that led to a lot of confusion, right?
Tons of it, with some critics claiming the writings were outright banned or even heretical.
Yeah, so that moratorium was really a function of the Church's intense caution regarding what it calls private revelation.
Right.
When a mystic makes these sweeping claims about the nature of God and humanity, the theological authorities essentially perform a decades-long autopsy on the texts.
Just going over every single word.
Exactly. They're looking for any contradiction to established doctrine. They aren't trying to bury the work out of malice. I mean, they're vetting it to protect the faithful from false teachings.
Makes sense.
And we really see the turning point in 1996. That's when theologians from the Vatican's doctrinal office, actually under the direction of the future Pope Benedict XVI, went directly into the archives.
Oh, wow. They went to the source.
Yeah, they spent days photographing and photocopying all 34 original handwritten volumes to ensure they had the unedited source material.
Which brings us to the modern day and those 2024 letters in our source stack.
Right.
So after independent theological commissions scoured those photocopies, Vatican Undersecretary Archbishop Philippe Curbelier issued statements declaring her writings completely free of doctrinal error.
The moratorium is officially dead.
Dead and gone. The local authorities, like the late Archbishop Piccarreta, have actively advocated for spreading her spirituality. They even issued a nihil obstat in August 2024.
Which is huge.
Yeah, it's the official lack of objection allowing her process for beatification to move forward. So the gate is wide open now.
And the fact that the Vatican applied that level of microscopic scrutiny and ultimately gave it the green light, well, it pushes us to examine the actual content.
Right, like what is actually in these books?
Exactly. What could be so complex and so potentially disruptive that it required a decades-long quarantine? It all comes down to a massive paradigm shift in how the text defines human free will.
Okay.
The theological bombshell in Luisa's diaries is the sharp distinction made between doing God's will and possessing it.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I want to break that down. It sounds like a subtle semantic difference, but the sources treat it like a total revolution.
Oh, it is a revolution.
Let's use an analogy for the listener. Up until now, the great historical saints people universally recognized for their holiness, they were essentially like brilliant art students trying to replicate a masterpiece.
Right.
They studied the brushstrokes of the divine, they mixed the exact shades of paint, and they used their own human willpower to try and copy what the master did.
Which is noble.
Very noble. They were doing a phenomenal job, but they were still using their own brushes.
And that captures the limitation of the traditional model perfectly. The text argues that even the most devout people were only ever aligning their human wills with the divine.
Aligning, not possessing.
Right. They figured out what God wanted and executed it using their limited, easily exhausted human capacity. But Luisa's writings claim that humanity is now being called back to the original operational state of Adam before the fall in the Garden of Eden.
Wait, so back to the very beginning.
Yes. According to this framework, when Adam was created, God didn't just give him a set of rules to follow. The divine will was placed within Adam's human will as the animating engine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the invitation in these 36 volumes is to return to that exact state, not just to do the divine will, but to possess it entirely.
That is massive.
The text claims this is the literal fulfillment of the Our Father prayer when it says, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven."
Okay, but if the goal is to possess the hands of the master, rather than just copy the painting, I find myself immediately wrestling with the philosophical implications for our autonomy.
The free will question.
Yeah. Think about what that actually means for you as a listener.
Yeah.
If you possess this divine will, if a divine force is supposedly doing the breathing, the walking, the thinking within you, do you lose your own free will?
It's a natural fear.
Are we talking about becoming divine puppets? Because a spirituality where your strings are just being pulled sounds less like an awakening and more like an existential takeover. Where is the media in this scenario?
It's a great question, and the source material addresses that friction directly through the mechanics of consent. You don't lose your agency. Your agency actually becomes the gateway.
Okay, explain that.
The text uses a very grounding analogy. The human will is an empty glass, and the divine will is the water.
Glass and water.
Right. The creature is never absorbed into becoming God. You always remain a distinct human being. But you use your free will to continuously, actively consent to let the Creator animate you.
So it's a choice.
A constant choice. It's a dynamic of mutual exchange. You provide the glass, and the divine provides the water. The text introduces the golden rule of this spirituality, which is, we desire it, and Jesus does all the work.
We desire it, and Jesus does all the work.
Exactly. The heavy lifting is removed from the human ego. Your only job is to use your free will to actively keep the glass upright and open.
That sounds incredibly liberating on a theoretical level, but how does that translate to someone's actual life?
Right, practically speaking.
Yeah, if you're not a mystic confined to a bed in Italy, if you're a listener dealing with a chaotic morning commute, paying taxes, and trying to feed your kids, what does it actually look like to keep the glass upright?
Well, the guidebook we reviewed, Living in the Kingdom of the Divine Will, is surprisingly mechanical about this. It breaks the practice down into specific tools.
What kind of tools?
It starts the moment you wake up with what the text calls the prevenient act.
The prevenient act.
Yeah. Before you even get out of bed, you make a conscious declaration setting the intention for the entire day. You say something along the lines of, "Come, divine will, come and reign in every thought, word, deed, prayer, joy, and suffering of this day."
Setting the stage.
You are effectively opening the valve for the day. But that morning intention isn't enough on its own to maintain the awareness. That's where the actual acts come in.
And those actual acts are where the spirituality gets deeply granular.
Yeah.
It's taking the grand cosmic theology and forcefully dragging it into the mundane.
It really is.
Think about your morning commute.
Yeah.
Usually you're just gripping the steering wheel, stressed about traffic, totally isolated in your own frustration.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Right. But this framework asks you to actively invite the divine into that exact moment. You don't just drive. You say, "Come divine will, come drive in my drive."
Yeah.
When you do the laundry, you say, "Come divine will, come wash in my washing." You are constantly prompting this internal engine to be the primary actor.
And the texts explain that the prevenient act makes room for the actual act, and the actual act preserves and enlarges the disposition for the prevenient act.
It's a loop.
It is. They create this beautiful feedback loop of awareness. Now, the natural question the sources anticipate is, what happens when you inevitably fail?
Because we do.
Because human beings lose their temper in traffic, we drop the ball, and if you sin or act selfishly, you lose the active operation of the divine will in that moment.
Oh, so the water spills out.
Essentially, yeah. But the framework is built on immense grace. The text asserts that with a sincere act of contrition, just a genuine apology and a request to start over the gift is immediately returned.
That's reassuring.
Yeah, the pressure of absolute perfection is removed, replaced by the requirement of constant, humble returning.
Elevating the mundane through those actual acts is beautiful, but the text doesn't stop at your laundry or your commute.
Not at all.
It scales this practice up to a mind-bending level through a concept called rounds. And this is where the framework explodes from personal spirituality into a cosmic exercise.
The rounds are incredible. The concept takes the idea of the actual acts and applies it to the entirety of time and space.
The entirety of it.
Yeah, the text describes rounds in creation, redemption, and sanctification. According to Luisa's diaries, she experienced visions where she was taken around the universe, shown how the divine voice was perpetually saying, "I love you," through the existence of every star, planet, and ocean.
Just constantly broadcasting it.
Right. And the practice of the rounds requires the individual to mentally walk through the universe and intentionally place their own "I love you" on every created thing in response.
Let's walk through what that actually looks like in practice for you, the listener. Because the mechanics are wild. You aren't just looking at the night sky and saying a general prayer of gratitude.
Oh, it's very specific.
The text asks you to mentally stamp a trademark of love onto the specific elements of reality. You place an "I love you" on the light of the sun, on the blade of grass, on the gravity holding the earth together.
Everyone.
And then you move into the rounds of redemption and sanctification, where you are instructed to place that same stamp on every historical act of Jesus and every inspiration the Holy Spirit has ever given to anyone.
And the mechanism that makes this possible is the concept of operating outside of time.
Outside of time.
Yeah, because the divine will is eternal. Stepping into it means your prayers are no longer bound by the present moment. The text instructs the reader to pray in the name of everyone, from Adam to the absolute last created soul on earth.
That is just huge.
There is a quote where the divine voice tells Luisa, "In my glances, I took all the creatures' eyes. In my voice, their words. In my movements, theirs."
Wow.
The claim is that when you pray in this state, you are gathering up the thoughts, words, and heartbeats of every human being who will ever exist and offering them back perfectly.
Think about the psychological impact of that kind of practice. I mean, the text explicitly says that from the first moment a soul decides to embrace this, they must learn to forget themselves.
It's the only way it works.
Right. If you are constantly executing these rounds, if you are spending your mental energy acting and praying in the name of the entire human race across all of time, there is quite literally no cognitive room left to ruminate on your own trivial anxieties.
It's true.
It functions as the ultimate ego death. Your identity expands so vastly to encompass everyone else that the selfish me simply gets crowded out.
And that annihilation of the ego through radical empathy is really the core mechanism of this entire spirituality. And that mechanism reaches its absolute peak in Luisa's most famous practical exercise.
Which shifts gears pretty significantly.
It does. It shifts the focus away from the universal beauty of the stars and the mundane chores of daily life directly into the ultimate act of suffering. It's a text called The 24 Hours of the Passion.
This is the specific book that really brought her work out of the shadows, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
St. Hannibal di Francia wrote the preface, and he noted that the first printing of 5,000 copies was depleted almost instantly.
People were drawn to it.
It is an hour-by-hour, microscopic breakdown of the last 24 hours of Jesus' life, starting at 5 p.m. with the bittersweet first hour taking leave of his mother, all the way to the burial at 5 p.m. the next day. But reading this through the lens of the divine will completely changes the objective.
Yes.
You aren't just reading a tragic historical account.
No, the source explicitly warns against treating it as mere history. The text claims that meditating on the passion and the divine will allows the reader to actively step into the events.
Step right in.
The text states, "To repeat my passion and act in the creature is different from one who only thinks about and compassionates my pains."
So empathy isn't enough.
Right. The framework proposes that just thinking about the history provides comfort, but doing it in the divine will gives back the actual effects and value of a divine life. You are substituting yourself to repeat the life in the present. You are adopting the posture of a proxy for humanity, saying, I want to appear for all, answer for all, and obtain grace for all.
But I have to say, the imagery she uses to facilitate this substitution is deeply unsettling. Visceral almost feels like an understatement.
It is very intense.
In the fifth hour, detailing the agony in the garden, Jesus isn't just anticipating physical execution. He is described as being tormented by eternal love, taking the form of fire thorns and fire nails.
Yeah.
The text says that love itself is the nail, penetrating deep into his bones, causing a mortal pain far worse than any physical torture to come.
Because the focus is on the interior mystical suffering that prefigures the physical cross, and the text forces the reader to confront the emotional devastation head-on.
It doesn't hold back.
Like in the 8th hour, during the encounter with Judas, the description focuses on Jesus lovingly kissing Judas's infernal lips, attempting to save him even in the exact fraction of a second the betrayal is occurring.
Wow.
Or the 9th hour, where Jesus is violently thrown from a ledge into the putrid Cedron stream. The text describes him being submerged in these nauseating, filthy, cold waters which enter his ears, mouth, and nostrils.
Okay, I have to push back on this because reading those passages is a harrowing experience.
It is.
The text uses that putrid water to represent the nauseating filth of human sin, showing him literally suffocating in the spiritual degradation of humanity. And Luisa wrote that for every single word of these hours read in the divine will, Jesus promises to save a literal soul.
Right.
It turns reading into an active rescue mission. But why is such a bloody graphic focus necessary? We exist in a world already saturated with trauma, violence, and despair. Why does spiritual growth require dwelling on fire nails and suffocating filth?
That tension is central to the text, and the framework actually provides a specific psychological mechanism for why it's necessary.
Okay, what is it?
According to the sources, the physical and emotional horror described is a direct mirror of the spiritual reality of human disconnection. In our daily lives, we are mostly numb to the impact of our actions.
That's definitely true.
We don't see the cosmic ripple effects of our own selfishness, our betrayals, or our coldness toward others. The 24 Hours of the Passion functions as a radical empathy engine. It is explicitly designed to shatter that numbness.
So it's forcing you to look at the collateral damage of human free will gone wrong?
Exactly that. By making the reader feel the visceral weight of humanity's actions through these haunting descriptions, it forcefully pulls them out of their own petty grievances.
It grounds you.
Right. It confronts the reader with the actual cost of separation from the divine, demanding that they choose unity instead. The framework isn't promoting suffering for the sake of suffering. It utilizes the contemplation of suffering as a mechanism to generate profound, transformative empathy. You are asked to feel the pain of the whole world so that, through the divine will, you can become the balm for it.
The journey this material takes you on is staggering.
Yeah.
We started in a silent bedroom in Italy with an isolated woman who spent 40 years writing down visions under the severe direction of Lady Obedience.
And we followed that through decades of intense Vatican scrutiny.
Right, leading to a rigorously vetted framework that invites ordinary people to participate in a cosmic scale of intention. We moved from the old model of the art student sweating over a flawed copy to the invitation to actually possess the hands of the master.
Turning everything,
Yeah. Turning every load of laundry, every commute, and every conscious breath into an act that reverberates through all of human history.
And regardless of whether you approach these sources from a deeply Catholic perspective or simply as a student analyzing human philosophy and psychology, the implications are revolutionary.
They really are.
We live in a cultural moment defined by profound isolation, deep anxiety, and a pervasive sense of meaninglessness.
Yeah, everybody feels it.
What this framework offers to the reader is an incredibly potent antidote to that modern despair. The text insists that your life, no matter how small, mundane, or hidden it feels, possesses absolute cosmic significance.
It matters.
It proposes a reality where you are never alone, because through the simple mechanism of your desire, you are connected to the very fabric of creation, acting on behalf of all humanity.
Which leaves us with the final concept from the text to mull over as we close. The framework claims that during his hidden years on earth, Jesus already redid everyone's life in his divine will.
Such a wild concept.
According to the text, he took into himself all the thoughts, words, and actions of everyone who would ever live, and he perfected them. That means he suspended a perfect divine version of your exact life within himself outside of time.
Just waiting there.
Exactly. It is already finished, simply waiting for you to use your free will to say yes and claim it.
Yeah.
So think about your own life right now.
Yeah.
If a perfect eternal version of your existence is already complete, just waiting to be downloaded into your reality, what exactly is the flawed, anxious, exhausting human version of your life that you are holding on to so tightly?
It's a great question.
Why keep struggling to paint a flawed copy when the master has already finished the perfect original?